meeting is being recorded.
I want to welcome everybody to the Resident and Family Support Council. We have this meeting at 3 o'clock on the second and the fourth Tuesday of every month. And the purpose of our meeting is to empower people with information so that those that are living in long-term care have information that can help them make sure that they feel in control and empowered through their lives as they are navigating the long-term care path. We are posting these meetings to our YouTube channel. And if you saw through the presentation, you could have held your smartphone up to the QR code and you'll be able to access those meetings that way. We'll also make sure that we put a link to that into the chat. Stephen, I see that you're here putting all the links in the chat for us. Thank you. If you could make sure that we also put the link for the YouTube channel into that, that would be great. And then also, I want to ask everybody to please get on and like our Facebook page. We want to get lots of likes. We've been trying to be more diligent in posting information to the page whenever we get any updates about anything. So if you're a Facebook person, a social media person, please get on and like us on Facebook. We really would like to ask everybody if you could please put your zip codes into the chat box. That's how we track who in the state we are, what areas in the state are engaging with us through this Resident and Family Support Council. One other thing I do want to ask of all of you so please feel free to share this information with anybody. Because what we keep finding is that people say, if I only knew of the Ombudsman program when I was going through this or that or the other, it would have been so helpful for me. And so sometimes people hear about the Ombudsman program just a little too late for them to acknowledge, knowing that there's somebody there to help support them and guide them as they're trying to navigate this really, really confusing path of long-term care. So what we decided, we have a work group that has been talking, and we really feel that sometimes when it comes to residents' rights, that not everybody truly understands what those rights really look like. So we're going to talk today about residents' rights. And I'm sharing my screen right now, and hopefully everybody can see that. And what we thought we would be doing for the next couple of meetings is really taking these rights and kind of really go through them so we can understand them and talk about them. We want to encourage all of you to unmute your microphone and unmuting your microphone to go ahead and type the question in the chat bar. That way, then we can get those questions asked. Because while the rights are just basically usually a sentence, they go a lot deeper than that. So it's more than just the sentence of information. It's a lot more than that. So we want to make sure that everybody truly understands what their rights are. So I'm going to be leading this conversation today. And so if we can go ahead, and we're going to be talking about the rights to privacy and confidentiality and what this really means. When we live in our own homes, we have privacy, right? No one else just walks into our home. Anything that we do in our home is our business. And we know that. And that's what makes it home for us. That's truly one of the things that home means for people, is that it's a place where you can have your own privacy really adhered to. And you don't welcome people into your home unless you want to welcome people into your home. And that confidentiality, when you live in a long-term care setting, you are in a medical environment. And so your medical record is there, but it's not for everybody to take a look at just because you're in that long-term care facility. And we're going to talk a little bit about what does that confidentiality really mean. So we're going to just kind of start peeling this onion down a little bit and talk about each of these in a little bit more detail. And as I said, please jump in if you've got questions about this, if you feel that your right has been violated in this, or you're not sure if your right has been violated, and you would like some further information about what this really means. So I'm going to go ahead and just start with the first one, which is you have the right to privacy and confidentiality of your personal and medical records. And your medical and personal care are private. So there's really almost two different things here. When it comes to your personal and medical records, these are your property. It's a record about you. So you get to say who gets to look at those records. The facility does because they are your healthcare provider, just as it would for a doctor. They have that right to your being able to see your medical records. And when you do transfer into a new community, your records will come with you. So they do have access to all of that. And that's to make sure that you get that care that you need and that all your medical information does get carried to the care provider. When it comes to that privacy and confidentiality of those records, it means that not anybody could take a look at those records, such as a maintenance man, a housekeeper. It just can't be anybody that could take a look at those. But when it comes to this, I think it's important that we understand that it's your record. It's the record about you, and you have the right to that record. That's an important piece that so many times people don't even ask. What is in your medical record? And we've heard before from people that said, I've asked to look at my care plan, which we've done some conversations around care plan and what that care plan is, that guidance and those directions on how your care should be provided. And I really do feel that everybody should be looking at that. Everyone should be asking for a copy of that care plan. Now, if you do want to ask for a physical copy of that record, they may charge you for the paper. They are allowed to charge you at the normal going rate for copies. So that can happen. And I am something just came up on my screen and said my internet connection is unstable. So I'm hoping that everyone can hear me okay. If you can't, please start raising your hands so that I can see that you can't hear me properly.
Hey,
so
Lee.
do know that you may be charged. Stephen, yes. Did you say something, Stephen?
Yeah, I just wanted to pop in and when you were mentioning the cost for copies, that can be somewhat subjective, and it might differ from one home to another. But the important thing is that it's accessible to you. So if you feel like your facility is charging you an obscene amount for making copies, give us a call and we can kind of look into it and see, if it really is unreasonable and if there are maybe other ways to get that information.
Can I add to that, please?
Absolutely, Carrie, go ahead.
So also your guardian and your POA have access to those and are also supposed to be able to get a copy upon request. I would usually tell people, ask first if they'll give it to you electronically so they can't charge you. Not all places will do it electronically, but both your guardian and your POA are supposed to be able to access that too. And a lot of facilities don't want to give it to people. So sometimes it's a little bit of a maneuver of how you get it.
And that's why this is an important right for you to know, because so many times that people will not, the facility may say, oh no, you can't have a copy of that. That's our record that they are just holding for you. So I think that's really, really important what Carrie said and Stephen said. And the copies are really supposed to be going at the going rate for that area. So if you go to Office Max and run a copy and it costs 5 cents to run a copy, they should be charging you 5 cents for that piece of paper. And that's the way it's supposed to be. And as Stephen said, that's what the ombudsman is here for. You shouldn't be being charged $1. Look at that and make sure that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. And like Carrie touched on, so your power of attorney for healthcare also has the opportunity to be able to see that record at any time, as well as a guardian. If you have a guardian, they also have that opportunity. But if you have a child who is not your power of attorney for healthcare, they would have to ask your permission to see that record. And that's another important piece to know, because some kids will get mad. Well, they showed it to my brother, but they won't show it to me. And that's because the brother may have been the power of attorney for healthcare, whereas the sister isn't. So you have to be able to give permission. But if you give permission, anybody can see it. And that's important also to know. I also want to include in on this permission to the ombudsman. They have permission to see your record as well. We will not look at your record unless we obtain your permission. So know that that's something that all ombudsmen will do. And we might ask to want to look at your record if we're trying to verify if treatments are being given, if you're having a problem with the dietary thing, the dietary system. So we may ask for records around that. We're not going to go to your medical record need to look at that. We won't overstep on that. The other piece to this is your medical and personal care are private. So what does this mean? This means that should be done in a private manner, and you need to shop before you eat. That should not be happening in the dining room. It should be happening in a private place. I know of long-term care facilities that will go, they might bring the resident into the nurse's station before they eat to be able to give them that shot. They're honoring that piece of the medical care being private. Also, that also comes down to a nurse in the dining room needing to give a blood pressure medication, and she asks this nurse's aide to take the blood pressure before she gives the medication. And they can't be shouting that information through the dining room. Know that as well. If you are uncomfortable with the situation where people are talking about your medical or your personal care in public, you can say, this conversation is about me. I have the right to privacy and confidentiality. Please do not talk about me in public like this. You have that right. When it comes to personal care, that even means that if you don't want your hair brushed in the day room and your hair fixed in the day room, you don't have to have that happen. Tell them, I don't want to get my grooming done in the dining room. I've seen that happen very frequently with people, and that may feel very uncomfortable for some. So know that you get to define what that looks like for you. If you have any questions, please feel free. Like we said, just go ahead and jump on in.
So Lee, when it comes to things such as some of those services being provided, IDPH will actually tag them if you are in a public area in the building and they are doing things such as checking your blood sugar or trying to hook up a feed down a G tube. So it's not even just your privacy, it is a violation. So, those things are supposed to be done in a private area. Hairbrushing, that they should ask you, but the other things very much so are supposed to always be done in private.
And if you're not comfortable with it, speak up, because you have that right to privacy. You have that right. And, just to take that a step further, you might then want to make sure that gets put into your care plan as well. If you're somebody who doesn't want your hair combed in a day room, in a family room area, you could say, you know what, and get that out of my care plan, because I don't want anybody to do that. I feel very uncomfortable having that happen. I don't like my hair combed when everybody's watching me. I'm not comfortable with that. And, the next thing then that I want to talk about is this knocking before entering your room. This is your room. Can you imagine all of those of you who live at home and somebody literally just tap, tap, tap on your door and walking right in your front door? Wouldn't you feel very violated? And that's what happens so many times. I see so many times happening in long-term care facilities where it's kind of that tap and walk in instead of knocking and asking permission, can I come into your room? If people are just tapping and walking in, it's not their room, it's your room. Speak up. Say, please honor my privacy, and I would like for you to get my permission before you come in here. This is, for those of you who live in a long-term care facility, that's your only private space. It deserves that respect. And also sometimes we even see facility staff forget to knock. They're buzzing around, they're bringing laundry in people's room, and they're just going room to again. Speak up. If you see it happening as a family member, as a resident, speak up and say, excuse me, but you need to knock on this door before you come into my room. I would not walk into your house. Do not walk into mine without my permission. Speak up. Does anybody see that happening in their own facilities where people just kind of walk in? Yeah, it's very uncomfortable to me. Your facility may not give information about you or your care to unauthorized persons without your permission, unless you are being transferred to a hospital or another healthcare facility. So what this means is that if you are going from the hospital to the nursing home, they will automatically transfer your records. And you usually do when you're leaving the hospital, you're signing a release of information. And if you're going from the hospital from the nursing facility to the records, they will send any skin treatment records. They'll send information like that are important for them to know. They're not going to send the whole record because these can be very extensive, but they will, what's pertinent to your treatment at the hospital, they will send that along with you to make sure that your treatment and your care doesn't get interrupted. But this is really that HIPAA. You know, we hear all about HIPAA, Healthcare Information Portability Act. And that's really what this is. It's just a reinforcement of that, because when you live in a nursing home many times, or even any long-term care facility, we start to feel like that things get a little too comfortable sometimes for people to be able to look in my record, to talk about me in public, to just walk in my room. And this is that reminder. No, there's still HIPAA, has to be enforced. Just because you're going from one healthcare facility, it still has to be enforced. We cannot give this information to anyone else without your permission. You are the runner of yourself, so you get to give that information. If your family capacity is in your power of attorney, you're the one who gives that authorization, or if you are a guardian. You have the right to have private visits at the hour of your choosing if it does not impose on the rights of residents. So what does this mean? Basically, what this means is that you can have visitors whenever you want. The federal government says in their regulations, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, that there cannot be visitation they want. And this makes sense for those people that have, I might work the late shift, and I get off of work at 11 o'clock at night. And I just and I can't get to see my mother, and I just want to pop by a couple of nights a week and say goodnight to her. She may even be sleeping, but I just want to go in and give her a kiss goodnight. If my mother would like for me to do that, I have that right to do that as well, because the resident steers that. If she at 11 o'clock at night, I can do that. So it's important. The doors, yes, they lock the doors just like we do in our houses. So you have to find out, how do I get in? And usually there's like a doorbell with an intercom, and it's connected to the nurse's station, and then they would let you in. But know that just because you work those off hours, if your loved one wants you still to have a visit, you can, but it can't interfere with the roommates sleeping. So I can't come in, turn the lights on, say, hey mom, how you doing? Because I can't interfere with the roommate. So that's important to know that. Now you may see though, in buildings, you may see hours posted. And that comes where in the state regulations, it does say that the posting of hours is permitted. Where the federal regulations say one thing and the state regulations say another. So they can't post hours, but just because they're posted doesn't mean if they say visitation hours are over at 5 p.m., just because of that, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that you can't have visitors. I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so I'm going through to see if I can.
Lee, you're breaking up again really bad.
Am I breaking up?
Yeah, you're breaking back up in your feet and you're feeding back.
Okay. Are you still getting?
I think we need to ask Carol Woods if you could mute, or if you had a comment. Thank you. I think that's where our problem is with the feedback.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going, thank you, Stephen, because I was looking to see. Thank you. So, that those visitation hours, know that if you do see hours posted, that does not mean that you can't still visit. And don't let the facility say, our visiting hours are over at 5 o'clock, you can't come in. If your loved one who lives in the facility wants you to visit at any hour of the day, you have that right. The only thing you need to be mindful of is you can't impose on the rights of other residents. So if you're a night owl and you like to be up at midnight and you want to visit with your kids at midnight, you have that right. But you're not going to be able to do it in your room if your roommate doesn't want that. Or even if you have a private room, if the noise is going to upset other people. You might have to go meet in a dining room someplace or in another place, but you do have that right. That's a piece that so many people, again, don't quite understand. Just visiting hours are posted, it doesn't mean that those are the only times that you can come and visit. Speak up, get that right asserted. You may ask any visitor to leave your personal living area at any time. This is anybody. You can ask anybody, and this visitor doesn't have to be, we're not just talking about family members. It could be even the ombudsman. An ombudsman comes and they're in the building and they knock on your door. You give them permission to come in and they can say, I don't want you to visit with me. I don't want you here right now. We will honor that and we will leave you alone. And you have that right to speak up. It's your house. It's your home. You have that right. You do not have to have people there. If a staff member comes in and you do not want them in your room, you can say, excuse me, I do not want you here right now. I'm trying to take a nap. I'm trying to read my book. I'm trying to watch my favorite TV show. Could you please leave me alone right now and come back later? You've got to remember that if you don't assert yourself with these rights, that people are not going to just go ahead and abide by them. You need to make sure that you assert yourself for these. You have the right to make and receive phone calls in private and to have access to the use of the telephone where calls can be made without being overheard. So many people nowadays have cell phones. And so it makes it a little bit easier to get that phone call, just the initiation of a phone call, or to make it and or to receive it. But if you don't have that, or you don't want to use your own cell phone, you also don't have to. The facility has to be able to provide you with a phone that you can use in private. And what this can look like is some buildings might have portable phones. And they might say, we can bring that to your room and you can make your phone call privately in your room. Others might say that we have office space. So the social service designee, many times it might look like that. They'll leave their office so that you can have that phone call in private. An activity director, she may leave her office so that you can have that phone call in private. Again, speak up about that. It's particularly if you're one of those people who have a phone and you've got minutes on your phone and you don't want to use those minutes up, you can ask the facility, I'd like to have private phone calls. Where can that happen? And how do I make that happen for myself? If they say, oh, just go to the nurse's station and you can make any phone call you want at the nurse's station, you can say that is not private. I want to be in my own private space where I can have my own private discussion. That can also look like the receiving calls you. You live in the nursing home, your daughter calls you, and they say, you've got a phone call at the nurse's station. You could say, I don't want to talk to her at the nurse's station. Can we please have this phone call in private? Where can that happen? You have that right. Just because they transferred the call to the nurse's station, they can transfer it again to a private space where you can have that phone call in private. If you are somebody who shares a room and you're using your cell phone and you still feel like because it's your cell phone that you can't have that private phone call in your room, you can also ask for a private space, even if it's on your own private cell phone. You can ask, I would like to be able to make a phone call in private. Where can that happen? And they have to be able to make that happen for yourself. Now might be a good time to share that I did post the link to all of the residents' rights in the chat box, a big brochure that we have about your rights. I highly recommend that you access that so that if you have a question about any of these rights at any time, that you can show this to the facility so that you can make sure that your rights get adhered to. The facility must deliver and send your mail promptly. Your facility may not open your mail without permission. So what this typically looks like is, and somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you've got to receive your mail within 48 hours. And please correct me if I'm wrong. I do know some facilities may even have a smaller window than that. It may be 24 hours. So what that could look like is if mail comes in on a Friday afternoon, you might not get it until Monday. You can say that I would like to get my mail sooner than this. I don't want to wait 3 days to get my mail. So do know that you should be able to get that mail promptly, and it should be unopened. They cannot open that mail, including any checks that you have coming to the facility. They cannot be opening if you're getting a Social Security check or anything like that, that may even be paid to the facility. But if it's in your name and your name is on the outside of that envelope, they have to have you open it, and it may be in front of them, but you have that right to open that mail yourself. So that's another very, very important piece to know, is that if you're getting your mail and it's already opened, know that they're violating your right with that. When it comes to sending mail, they also should be able to have stamps available for you to be able to use. You may have to pay for those stamps, but they should have stamps on the premise. If you want to send a letter, a card, anything that you want to send, they should have, they have to be able to provide you with that stamp in a timely manner as well. And lastly, when it comes to privacy and confidentiality, if you are married and you and your spouse have the right to share a room if both spouses agree to the arrangement. And that's pivotal to know, because sometimes not both spouses want that, particularly if one spouse is sicker over another spouse. The spouse who's even sicker may say, you know what, I don't want my husband in here because you're coming in all hours of the night to take my blood pressure, and I don't want it to upset my wife. So please, I really don't want to share a room with her right now. And you have that right to be able to do it. But you also do have that right to be able to share that room if you would like to do that. And with that also goes that you have the right to privacy to be able to continue any marital relationships that you want to be able to continue. And that's where knocking on the door really does become very important. You have that right to be able to be with your spouse in an intimate, or even just sitting there together in quiet, whatever you want, without anybody else coming on in and intruding in on your married life together. So those are your rights to privacy and confidentiality. Mm-hmm.
So we also need to
go ahead.
Even if you're not married and you have a significant other, you are still entitled to that privacy if they come to see you. Because people don't always understand that either.
Yep, and that's at private visits. We have that private, and that's a really important thing. You may even have, you know, a relationship with somebody that you're not married to, and you have that right to have privacy, to be able to be honored, to be able to have intimate relationships with another person that of your choosing. You have that right to be able to do that. Nothing disappears just because you entered into a long-term care facility.
Now, Lee, correct me if I'm wrong, but in that sort of, or really any situation, you don't have the right to displace your roommate in the room. So if you are wanting to have a private visit, whether it's with family or with a girlfriend or whomever, the person having the visit is either going to have to work with the roommate to, you know, ask them nicely to leave, or to coordinate another location for privacy reasons.
Yes. And that goes along with that imposing on the rights of other residents. We can't impose on, and that becomes the that piece here. That's the, when it comes to residents' rights, that's really the only difference is that you're living in a setting where there's multiple people living there at one time. When we're at home, it's just us or our other family members. And we learn to be respectful of our other family members, right? So it's that same kind of a concept. When you live in a long-term care environment, we need to be cognizant of those other family members, if that's the way you want to refer to that, that live under that same roof. We need to be cognizant of that as well, so that we can, because everybody has those equal rights when it comes to living in a long-term care community. Are there any questions? Any questions in the chat box? Do we have any further questions about these rights or any other rights?
Yes, this is Patricia Canes. I am a member of the Illinois Department of Public Health, Board of Health. And many of the experiences that I have had through many years working with human services has been the fact that we usually protect Social Security numbers. And that's part of our privacy and confidentiality, okay? Once a person enters into the Medicare system, the Social Security becomes in reality an open book because of the Advantage Plan, because of the private agencies that start to promote all these products. What kind of protection there is there for individuals who are in Medicare to protect their Social Security numbers? And I have been an advocate of protection of Social Security for many, many years, okay? So what kind of protections are we offering the population, the aging population?
Wow, Patricia, that's a really good question.
It's a really good question because in the light of the technology today, so many things are taken away, you know? So I am very, very concerned about what is the legislation that protects our seniors from being stolen their identity and used for many unacceptable purposes, you know? So if you can give me an answer, it will be great.
I'm going to defer to other people because that's such a great question and we can explore that. I think I have heard, and this is, you know, that's where, you know, really kind of look more at the Medicare and your Medicare number as opposed to the Social Security number, trying to focus in on that. I'm trying to think myself when it comes to the medical record and Social Security numbers in medical records. I have not looked in a medical record, keeping attuned to the Social Security card. So
hey,
I can
Lee,
explore that.
This is Karen. And in Illinois, we have a law called the Identity Protection Act. And that act puts certain limitations on the use of Social Security number by public entities. And under HIPAA, a Social Security number is one of the specifically protected unique identifiers. So for example, the Department on Aging, when it releases records, it redacts sensitive personal identifiers. So many other agencies are doing that. But it is always a good idea to talk with the providers to understand what their privacy policies are, and to periodically, check your records and to report issues of identity theft.
Okay. Thank you.
Karen, do you know how people would check their record for identity check?
A common way is to make your annual free check of the credit agencies, like I can't think what the big one is called. It's something.
I believe it's Equifax, and then there's Experian, I think. There's three of them, yeah.
Because of the age and the confinement of many people in their nursing homes, should be important to advise people when they go into these facilities to have a guardian that is going to be doing that kind of monitoring. I understand that not everybody is accessible to technology, and not everybody is accessible to the capacity of looking into the details. Additionally to the fact that even though I am still working, I can say that the font every time becomes smaller and smaller. So for a person aging, probably is going to have a lot of difficulties looking into these detailed data. But giving advice to seniors regarding having a second person that is going to be tracking, I think that will be an extremely positive way for them to be protected, extra protected, we can say, and those
right. There's this concept in elder law, and you see it more in working with families that have members who have disabilities, and it's called life care planning. So all of us at every stage of our life hopefully has someone looking out for our best interests. It starts when you're parents, but as soon as you reach your age of majority, you need to be thinking about how to protect yourself in the case of an emergency. And some of the most powerful documents and ways to do that are by creating an authorized representative called an agent under a power of attorney. And Illinois has two basic types: a power of attorney for healthcare and a power of attorney for property. And they are statutory short forms so that you can see what the bases are. But if you have complicated personal life, or you have a significant amount of assets, it's in your interest to talk to an attorney to put in appropriate checks and balances. So that way you can have a person doing different checks on your behalf under the situations that you ask for. Individuals get a guardian if they're no longer able to manage personal affairs on their own behalf. But you can preempt the need for a guardian by having a power of attorney in effect. But that person needs to be someone that you know to be very dependable and responsible, and frankly, available to look at the interest the way you want your interest to be looked at. And with an aging population, that can be harder and harder to do.
Yeah. Karen, thank you for that. And I think many people on this phone call in this meeting, are people's power of attorney. So I think there's some good messages that were just shared with us. One of them being, we should, as a power of attorney for property, we should be looking at getting at making sure that nobody has stolen somebody's identity. Look at those, the Equifax and the other.
And it's something that you want to look at you know, on a periodic basis, like pick a date like that's meaningful to you, like your birthday, Valentine's Day, Thanksgiving, and make it a point of checking on an annual basis, because there are instances where the person that you pick to be your agent, the nature of your relationship changes and you want to make an update, or that person is no longer healthy enough in their own right to do that. So the form allows you to also name successor agents in the case of the primary one not being able to serve. And that's the important thing about picking an agent. The agent needs to be a person who is willing to serve. So you really need to discuss, you know, what's going on in your life on a regular basis to keep your agent up to date. And I say that from personal experience, because I've served as an agent for my mother at the end of her life. And not everybody is going to be comfortable making certain decisions. And I've also served in an agent to my longtime significant other when his health took a turn for the worse. So many times you're an agent and it never really comes into play,
and I think
but
what you
it
said
could come into play, and you need to be able and willing to stand up and take on those powers.
And while you're doing that, it has to be not what you want, what the other person would have wanted. And that's why, like you said, those conversations are very, very important to be had when you're appointing that person to be your agent. Make sure they understand where you stand on what you value, what you want for your life. That's I think a very important thing. It's really good information. Thank you. And great question when it comes to all of this identity theft stuff, because it is prevalent out there. I do know that this is something that can be very worrisome for many people, particularly if you've been through that. There also are, I do know that some credit cards even have affiliated with the free credit checks and or identity theft protection. So you might want to, you know, if you have that, sometimes it just comes as a package deal with some of your credit cards or some of your bank accounts and things like that.
Lee, the other thing,
you can't just, you know, sit back. Go ahead.
Is when somebody is a power of attorney, and especially when you're talking about medical issues and end of life, that is an ongoing conversation. It should never be one and done. Because people's opinions can change as they change. So it is really important to keep that as truly as an ongoing conversation, so you know what your loved one wants if you have to make that decision.
And if I could add in to that, always pick, when it comes to finances and healthcare, always pick the child that you trust the most, not the one who's most convenient. Because a lot of times you'll have a loved one who lives in town who's maybe not made the best life choices, and then you've got another one in California who's running a software company and is doing great, and you know, you trust them with everything, but you pick the kid in town because they're nearby. No, pick the one who you trust no matter where they're living. Pick the one you trust the most. And you know, I don't want to go down too far into the power of attorney rabbit hole, because that's a topic for another time. But Lawrence posted the names of the credit agencies, and it's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And you can check those. They're separate companies. So you can check one in January, another one in May, another one in November, and then back to January. And then getting back to privacy issues, Karen Kloppy commented that HIPAA allows for information to be shared for treatment, payment, and operations issues. Otherwise, an authorization is required unless there's an exception, which is usually based on some type of emergency. And honestly, even within the nursing homes, I'll hear residents say, you know, there's like a billing issue and they're worried that the staff aren't going to treat them well. Well, most of the staff, your CNAs, your nurses, have no idea that there's a billing issue because it's none of their business and privacy doesn't allow them to know. The business office, probably definitely the administrator, maybe the director of nursing are going to know. But after that, no one else.
Yeah.
So
good point.
We have a hand, Evelyn, if you want to go ahead and unmute.
I have a question. What if you have the power of, I have a friend, not me personally. He was given power of attorney and all of the paperwork was done by the nursing home that the person is in. And the bank decided to freeze his personal account and the patient's account and put the FBI on him to stop him from he was trying to fix up the person's house to bring him home. And they froze, they have challenged everything, even his own money. So what should he be doing? And both of them, well, he's in his 60s and the gentleman that he's trying to take care of is in his late 80s, early 90s.
When you execute a power of attorney, in order for it to be valid, you have to be considered capable of doing so. So a common example is a person who has the onset of some form of a dementia. Now, for those people, it's like a continuum. They may be competent in certain instances or certain times, they may not in another. So if someone wants to challenge the power of attorney to guard against the risk of financial exploitation, a complaint could be made. So in this instance, without knowing additional facts, it sounds as though there are concerns about the risk of financial exploitation.
So you think I should give him y'all number and tell him to call y'all?
I would be happy to take the call. I will list my phone number in the chat box for you.
Okay, thank you.
That was a good question, Evelyn. Thank you for that. You just want to put your hand down just so that we're clear.
Trying to do that. Okay. Oh.
There we go. Good. Does anyone have any other questions or thoughts or ideas about any of this? Well, I think today's conversation was an important conversation. And when it comes to privacy and confidentiality, it can't take these spins because, you think, well, who has my information? Who knows about me? And power of attorney is one of those people who should be knowing about you. But again, like Karen explained, it doesn't kick in. It's not one of those things, I have a power of attorney and I am, at least I think I am, of sound mind right now. So my children, I have my daughter for healthcare. And as Stephen said, I selected my daughter because she's a physical therapist. She understands healthcare. She's very holistic in the way she treats, and that mirrors what I like. So she's my power of attorney for healthcare. My finances, not so good at that. She's not so good at that. My youngest son, he's Mr. Spender, so he's not it either. My oldest son, we always tease, he's the one who is Chief Charlie. So he's my power of attorney for finances. But right now, they're not making any decisions in regards to me because I am of sound mind. I am of decisional capacity. It will only kick in when I can no longer make those decisions. So just because you are somebody's power of attorney doesn't mean that you get to make their decisions for them. It only happens when that need exists for it to happen. And it could bounce. I could go into the hospital right now with urinary tract infection, and I could be confused because that could be a side effect of a urinary tract infection. So I might not be able to make any
I wanted to share one other point that I personally found helpful. If you have a family that has lots of individuals that are interested in your concern, but they don't necessarily get along, it can be helpful to have a family meeting and let people know what's going on, or to write individual letters explaining why your preferences are going on. The letter was something that was very helpful in my family, simply because in my personal family, I have two much older brothers, and they kind of thought they would be making the decisions for my mom because they were older. But my mom made me the person in charge of her healthcare decisions, because we, both being women, had talked more about her personal wishes and healthcare issues, and my brothers handled the business matters. And that letter helped soothe any feelings of, favoritism or slight. And it worked out great, because one of my brothers did not emotionally feel he could put our mother in a nursing home when we could no longer safely manage her care needs at home. And I did not have that emotional bugaboo. I knew it's what needed to be done that was in the best interest of the care of my mother, but also to protect my brother, who was her primary caregiver. So that's something to keep in mind, that if your family has a lot of dynamics, sometimes you need to provide those explanations, even though they don't have any right to them. Sometimes it just makes the process easier in the long run.
Thank you for that, Karen, because we do hear so many times, there can be so many stories related around that where families get upset with each other over it. And it can be very difficult.
I agree wholeheartedly with what Karen was saying. And I've actually got a formula. If you have a bit of money, dementia, and it doesn't have to be a lot of dementia, just some slightly more than normal cognitive decline, and family conflict, you will end up under a guardianship. Because
no one,
because there's going to be a fight in the family when you're no longer able to make decisions. So make sure that your wishes are known, the reasons for your choices are known, and be very clear about that. And we mentioned having a successor agent set up earlier. That is so important to have, because if your son gets into a car accident and he can no longer manage your finances, we don't like thinking about that, but if that happens, you need to have a successor able to step up. Or even worse almost, if your son is stealing money from you, you need to be able to have a successor in place who can take over and manage your finances or make decisions for your healthcare. Although in Illinois, healthcare isn't as serious of an issue because there's the healthcare surrogate, but very important to have a successor as well as a primary agent.
And I want to encourage everybody, the conversation that we had today, all of this is important. If you work in a long-term care community and you're part of this conversation today, if you work in the field of aging, if you are somebody who lives in a nursing home, and or if you're a family member of somebody who's in a nursing home, that's basically who our audience, who our participants are in these calls, to continue to have conversations like we're having right now. I have found that people truly do not understand. They don't understand residents' rights fully. I think it's important not just to say, let's do an in-service on residents' rights, and you go through the whole thing. You need to talk about what these rights really, truly look like, because that's how a conversation like this then evolves to this point of talking about power of attorney. And it's so interrelated that it's a very important conversation to have. And staff that work in the industry don't always understand it fully. And it's important that we do understand this fully. I find that nurses' aides don't understand it. I find that activity staff don't understand it. I find that nurses don't understand it. And so they won't even go to the resident and ask them if they want this new medication. They're immediately calling the family member. And the resident may be completely cognizant, and the family member says, sure. And the resident's like, no, I've been on this medication before and I don't like the way it makes me feel. It makes me feel sick to my stomach. I don't want it. And the daughter didn't know that. The daughter shouldn't have even been called about that. It should have been a resident issue only. And so that's why it's important that we have these conversations. We will be continuing to do this with these residents' rights. Our next meeting, we did invite public health to come and talk to us regarding all the new treatments that are happening with COVID. And unfortunately, I have not heard back from them. I know they're at a very, very busy time right now with the Omicron. So I don't know if they will be participating with us next time or not, which will be in 2 weeks, which would be on the, somebody get me the date, January 25th, I'm thinking, around there.
Yes,
and
it's
so
January 25th.
Okay. So January 25th at 3 o'clock will be our next meeting. We will have this conversation on our YouTube page. So do feel free to send people towards that page if they want to understand this a little bit more, have staff listen to it. That's great, because we're also hearing from people who this is you're living it. So I think it's important for us all to hear that. We will be, if we do not have public health come and talk next time, we will be going through another residents' rights and really exploring what that means as well. Is there Evelyn? I think you got your hand up again.
Yes. Will you be doing a meeting about the conditions that are in HUD housing for seniors?
We unfortunately don't work.
So we're not experts in HUD. So for ombudsman, we are in long-term care facilities. But if that's a topic that enough people are wanting, I think we could find the resources for it. Probably.
Well, I can just some of the things that is going on. They are violating HIPAA laws in some cases. They are going into senior apartments, stealing from them in some cases. There is even a case where I have one senior that I'm working with, where they walked in and told her guests that out of her apartment and told him he had to leave.
Well, why don't we do this? If you are interested in this topic, please express that in the chat, and then we can take that under consideration. Thank you, Evelyn. We're always looking for ideas for things to bring to this group, because we want to make sure that we're talking about what people want to hear.
Well, with this, they're planning another meeting of about 10 or 15 different senior buildings on the 19th of this month. If somebody has a link that I could send the information to you too, then I would be willing to do that.
Please do. I can put my email address in the comment section. I will go ahead and I will do that right now. And I am always looking for, I need to stay informed. So please do, Evelyn. And I'm putting my email address in there right now. It's just my first and last name at illinois.gov.
So, and Evelyn,
and as you can see, I launched the poll. Go ahead, Stephen.
So Evelyn, Karen Kloppe put in a link for HUD complaints. And so I assume you can click that and go to a complaints form. I think I saw Mary Patton had her hand up.
Yes. Do I understand that these rules are federal rules that apply to all the states, and except where you mentioned listing, say, visiting hours by the state? So these are federal rules, not just Illinois state rules?
Yes. All these rights that we've talked about are all federal residents' rights.
Thank you.
Good question, Mary. Good question.
To clarify, they are federal rules for nursing homes. So your assisted livings and other types of facilities have some different rules that different rights that they have to follow, because assisted living is regulated by the state, not by the feds. So just to clarify that.
Okay.
Yes. And we did, Stephen did put in the chat, we have a document that we've created that talks about who governs over who and where you can access those regulations. And inside the regulations is where the rights are listed. But the rights are very, very similar. The wording might be a little bit different, but if you look at the rights that we went over, they're really basic human rights that have been adapted to living in a structured long-term care situation. But they are basic human rights. And the bottom line is you don't lose any rights because you live in the nursing home. You actually gain even additional rights because now you not only get to live by the rights as a United States citizen, you also get to live by the rights of living in the long-term care facility as well. So it's important to know. Great question, Mary. Really great question. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end the recording right now. And but I will stay on if anybody has any further questions that they would like to ask. Please do feel free.